I used to drink coffee with Brenda every morning. Brenda had something good every day cooked. Yes, indeed. They had so many questions they were asking. Who do you think did it? They asked me, did you have anything to do with it? Why would I kill my little sister? She had been stabbed in the head 10 or more times. It was a horrible death. I went to her casket. I told her, Brenda, before I die, I'm gonna solve this murder. And I plan to do just that.
Opelousas used to be a very good place to live in. When I first started here, it was 1977. I enjoyed the people that I met in the street as an officer in the city and the people that I worked with. You didn't have many homicides. Things started to change in the town. As the years went on, it got worse.
On the morning of May 20th, Brenda came to my house. I was graduating, get my GED, and Brenda came and started helping me make finger foods, cookies, sandwiches and stuff for the little party after my graduation. And Brenda stayed at my house until, I'm sure about 8:30 or 9 o'clock that night. And then it started raining real hard, lightning. I mean, the lightning was so bright you would think it was sunshine outside. It was raining really hard. Brenda went back to her apartment. She said she was gonna go in for the night.
29-year-old Brenda DuPont rents a small apartment behind her sister Linda's home.
I used to drink coffee with Brenda every morning. And the next morning, I sent Lee Herbert, my son, to go get Brenda to come eat breakfast. But Brenda didn't answer the door. And then finally, after about the third or fourth time, I went to my landlord's house and asked her if I could use her phone to call the police, because I knew something was wrong. Brenda would have let us in by now.
Police arrive to find a locked front door. The officer knocks, but Brenda doesn't answer.
The first officer that arrived on the scene observed a window in the back that was open. And when she looked through the window, from her vantage point, she observed Brenda's body.
The officer now has to get inside Brenda's house any way she can.
When the policewoman kicked the door in, I saw the mattress was kind of slanted against the bed frame, and I saw Brenda's body in a fetal position. Her eyes were open, but I knew she wasn't alive. When I saw Brenda's body on the floor, and I saw all the blood, I started screaming. And it was hard because I had to call my family and tell them that Brenda was gone. It was really hard.
Brenda was the youngest girl in 12 children. We were 6 girls and 6 boys, and Brenda was the baby girl. Brenda was my godchild. My mother chose me to be her godmother. My dad was a sharecropper. We had to miss the first 6 weeks of school to help my daddy harvest crops.
They were raised in a little country town on a bayou. Very poor people, like many families are from this area. Her dad fed his family catfish from Bayou Teche, and they lived a very, very loving life in that family.
I would have done anything for my little sister, Brenda. We all had a share in spoiling Brenda. We call it in French, un gâteau chaud. She was my little hot cake. I spoiled her a lot. But Mom and Dad made sure we went to church We had catechism once a week, like on Saturday mornings.
Brenda didn't want to be dressy all the time. She wanted to be in her jeans sometimes, her little tank tops. But Mom and Dad always told Brenda, you can't wear just anything at church.
When Brenda is 18 years old, she gives birth to a daughter of her own, Monica.
I do believe she was a little bit nervous when she found out she was pregnant because she was young, but Brenda was a very good mother.
She started dating when her mother and father let her go, and she married the young man she was in love with. And that didn't last very long.
The breakup is hard on Brenda.
So she had no income. Brenda was really depressed then. That's when the CPS got involved. And then that's how she lost custody of Monica.
Brenda was depressed after they took Monica away from her.
And they told her, you know, the only way you get Monica back is for you to do what the doctors tell you to do, Brenda. She started taking her medications and she was abiding by it. Brenda moved next door to me and she was getting on her feet. Brenda would do what she had to do to get her daughter. Brenda was doing very well.
I received a call to proceed to the intersection of Church and Railroad. Did know Brenda. Brenda's sister, Linda, lived adjacent to her, and I knew that she had a daughter. Brenda was very easygoing. Brenda was funny. She didn't bother anybody.
I was working as a patrolman on that particular day. I knew Brenda lived at that residence. I knew Linda, her sister. I knew all of the people that lived in the house. This wasn't a big city at the time. I remember I passed by the crime scene. There was a lot of people out there.
Opelousas police videotape the gruesome crime scene.
Going into the crime scene and observing Brenda's body lying there, it was an overkill. You know, there was blood everywhere. It was an efficiency home that Brenda lived in. It was a one bedroom kitchen. The thing that stood out to me was the multiple stab wounds and the bite marks. That in particular stood out to me. She had no clothes on. That struck out to me that we would have to request, sexual assault kit be administered during the autopsy. I was perplexed and angry at the same time. Angry because who in the world would do this to Brenda? When we were going through the crime scene, we were looking for any possible weapons, anything that the suspect could have left behind at that crime scene. We found no weapons in Brenda's house that could have caused this, or that was even linked to this.
Detective Victorian zeroes in on the locked door and open window.
You don't enter a person's house and then leave out the window. You come out the same door that they let you in. The theory at the beginning of Brenda's murder was that whoever killed her, she let him in. She knew him because the door was locked.
Detectives focus on the people living closest to Brenda, her sister Linda, and Linda's boyfriend, Diker Chavis.
They started questioning me. They had so many questions they were asking. Who do you think did it? Did you have anything to do with it? Why would I kill my little sister? I was angry with the police because they were looking directly at us. Nobody in my house did this. So if y'all want to find the true murderer, go out and find the true murderer.
The chief of police at the time summoned the entire investigative division into going into canvassing the area. Sometimes people don't want to come forward right away. People see things that they don't think are important to investigators. A canvass is done to hopefully seek out someone who has information relative to the crime. But the initial canvass on that day revealed no new information relative to Brenda's death. It was extremely rare for this kind of murder, something like we had never seen before. We were at a loss. This was brutal.
Adding to police pressure, people in the small community are scared that the killer isn't finished.
I was very paranoid after my sister was murdered. I wonder if that's the one that killed my sister. I wonder if he's gonna come after me.
A lot of people were concerned because that person who did commit that crime is still out there, and he's probably gonna kill again.
The first thing I was afraid of is that whoever killed Brenda would come back, and I was afraid of that.
Police process the crime scene, and the medical examiner takes Brenda's body to a funeral home.
It wasn't until I could get to the funeral home where we could do a thorough examination in the presence of the coroner.
I first became familiar with the Brenda DuPont case when I was working at the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab in 1988. There were over 75 items of evidence that were submitted to the Louisiana State Police Lab. I was able to look at the items from the sexual assault kit, such as the vaginal washings and the vaginal swabs. We were able to identify seminal fluid and actually visually identified spermatozoa. So we knew that there was a sexual element involved to the case.
Investigators might have the killer's DNA, but there isn't much they can do with it.
Well, back in 1988, forensic DNA analysis was in its infancy. It just wasn't as precise and accurate and as widely available as we needed. There weren't really any workable databases back then to compare things to.
During the autopsy, the coroner finds bite marks and 31 stab wounds.
First thing that popped on me is if this was, certainly this was a crime of passion.
You want to talk to the people who lived close. You want to talk to people who had knowledge of who she was and what she did. The investigators, they talked to several people who lived in the neighborhood in reference to the murder of Brenda DuPont. And you do want to talk to the family members. The sister lived right in front of Brenda DuPont.
They wanted to take me to Baton Rouge to take a lie detector test. And I was willing. I did the test, said I passed it. They didn't have to worry about me. So they continued testing other people that they thought would have done it.
Her friend, Dyker Chavis, was present.
Dyker was my boyfriend at the time. Yeah, he lived in the home with me. He was a working man. And he tried to do everything he could for me and my children. And would help Brenda too, Brenda and Monica if they needed.
The attack on Brenda was brutal, and investigators believe Brenda's sister or her sister's boyfriend would have heard her screaming.
I believe they questioned Dyker a good bit because here was Dyker, right next door.
Initially, we thought that Linda and Dyker's proximity and such a horrible and violent crime that they didn't hear anything. We all, investigators talked about that.
Both Linda and Dyker claimed the thunderstorm that night must have drowned out Brenda's screams.
They just didn't hear it. They heard nothing.
I know if Linda would have heard anything, Linda would have gone out. I know Linda. Linda would have gone out and faced the killer, no doubt.
While questioning family, detectives also discover that Brenda had been dating two men named David.
We learned that Brenda was dating both of them during the same time, and we needed to find out if one found one another. They both got mad at one another, if this was a revenge killing. So certainly we had to pick up those two and interview them.
When you get this kind of information, you try to find that person and talk to them and, see where were they at the time, what were they doing, what was going on with them. And like all other people, the investigators talked to them about this crime.
It was later ruled out that they had nothing to do and were not affiliated with the death of Brenda DuPont.
As detectives continue their search for Brenda's killer, her family gathers for her funeral. 11-year-old Monica will face life without a mother.
The whole family was devastated. I had donated my plot in the cemetery. My little brother made her headstone, a beautiful headstone.
The family buries Brenda with her maiden name, Bergeron.
It was only the immediate family could view her body because it was so badly messed up. And when I went to her casket, I told her, Brenda, before I die, I'm gonna solve this murder. And I meant that.
One person missing from the funeral is Brenda's estranged husband, Jerry.
After he found out Brenda was murdered, he never came around. My mom even offered him to be a pallbearer. He said yes, and he didn't show up. But you don't come to your own wife's funeral. Come on now. We thought Jerry could be involved in it because, he didn't want her anymore. He put her and her little girl out, and he left Brenda for another woman.
Just a few weeks before she got killed, she had gone and met up with that woman that her husband Jerry was messing with. They got into an argument. And the lady was bigger than her, but Brenda did not back down. We mentioned everything to the cops. We told them about that.
Well, we're always going to pick up and talk to the estranged person. We have to rule him out as a suspect. Detectives contact their estranged spouse to see if it was a revenge killing, and to see if there was any culpability.
They did question Jerry thoroughly about what happened that night when Brenda and that woman got into an argument.
Police checked Jerry and his girlfriend's alibis, and they both hold up. They're checked off the suspect list.
We interviewed, had to be hundreds of people. It was an exhaustive list of people that were interviewed.
Police have no witnesses, no solid suspects, and no new leads.
We got to that point where we just couldn't do any more with it until the case evolved. And I always say about this case is this is a case that the evidence had to wait for the technology to catch up with it.
It was very, very frustrating because we kept running into dead ends.
Police in Opelousas were still trying to catch Brenda's killer when the town is rocked by another murder.
We had a report of a shooting approximately 3 or 4 city blocks from Brenda's homicide.
A lot of people were concerned because it was a pretty shocking thing for them to know that something like this had happened in the city.
Because of the proximity of the crimes, we thought that it could be our guy.
There was an individual, Clint Thompson, who was a person of interest.
Opelousas police looked for connections between Clint Thompson and Brenda's murder.
He was chasing a female into a home, apparently to hurt her. There was an individual, a man who was at the home and shot and killed him.
His case had some similarities to Brenda's crime because he was trying to get into a house. There was a lady there. We thought that, hey, that was the big break. This was it. It was very, very urgent. Either we have our man who committed this horrible crime at Brenda's house, or we still have a killer out on the loose.
The dead man may just be the killer they've been hunting. Aiming to link Thompson to Brenda's murder, Detective Victorian turns to a new forensic technique.
Forensic odontology, what's called pattern matching, was touted as being almost as good as fingerprints by a lot of their experts.
They knew that there was bite marks on one of Brenda's breasts.
The marks were so identifiable on her that, we had good pictures to scale, and we were gonna solve this case. My partner and I at the time went to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where we met with a forensic odontologist there who was sort of world-renowned. He had a reputation. I remember my partner and I sitting down with this pathologist. After talking to him, I was just confident that the bite mark was gonna bring us to where we needed to be. We needed exemplars of Thompson's teeth. And the coroner did the impressions and obtained the exemplars we needed. At that time, we had been in consultation with a second forensic odontologist. He was in Washington, D.C. at the FBI headquarters. He advised me if I could get over there, he would be more than happy to make some determinations. And, at that point, I got on the next flight out to Washington, D.C. with the exemplars and met the forensic pathologist at the FBI Academy. So it was urgent that we get somebody to examine those exemplars so that we can move on with our investigation.
Detective Victorian still has his suspicions about Linda's boyfriend, Diker Chavis. He tests bite samples from both Chavis and Thompson.
The exemplars the forensic odontologist examined definitely ruled out Diker Ray Chavis as a suspect. However, Clint Thompson's exemplars bared some similarities. I was confident on my way back after obtaining that information. I was hopeful that we had our suspect.
Since their prime suspect is already dead, investigators can't use their usual tactics.
If this man would have been alive, we'd make an arrest on him, and you put him in jail.
Certainly, you can't talk to him, you can't interview him. There were things we would like to have known, a lot of unanswered questions.
The chief of police typed up a statement that there was a similarity to the bite marks and sent it to the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab.
Once we had learned that back in 1989 that a bite mark had been identified, we'd considered the case solved based on the information we had at the time.
So most of the people are not even looking at it again.
When the police came home and mentioned Clint Thompson may have done this to Brenda, I didn't go for it. I didn't know Clint Thompson, but I don't think Clint Thompson did this to Brenda.
When the pathologist takes a closer look, he determines that Clint Thompson couldn't have left those bite marks on Brenda. Investigators are right back to square one.
I felt frustrated, it was sad because we couldn't put our hands on the suspect.
I asked him, what's going on with Brenda's murder? Are y'all still working it? City court gave me custody of Brenda's daughter. And it was hard because Monica's only thing was, who killed my mama? And we couldn't answer that. We couldn't answer it. What do you tell her?
Determined to keep the case alive, Linda remembers the vow she made on Brenda's casket.
And I said, no, in my book, it'll never be a cold case file. Never will be. That's my baby sister. And I promised her I was going to solve it, and I plan to do just that. I keep Brenda's pictures in my den on the piano, and I have some on a bookshelf, and just remember things that she and I did together. I said, Brenda, I promised you I was going to solve this case.
One year after the murder, detectives still have no idea who killed Brenda DuPont.
You certainly get tips that you had to follow up on. It's just that all of it just wasn't turning up anything. We just didn't have anything solid to go with.
They didn't want to tell me they had made it a cold case file.
With the passage of time, leads in the case vanish like a flash of lightning in the Louisiana night, and the case goes cold. In 1995, 7 years after the murder, Detective Victorian leaves the department.
Leaving the department and the suspect is still running around, it certainly frustrates you. And you think about, did we miss out on anything? Did we leave something behind? Having to pass in front of that house, pass in that area at different times certainly triggered certain emotions.
The now 18-year-old daughter, Brenda, left behind, is haunted by her mother's murder.
It was hard to see that child not being raised by her mother. Linda loved her dearly and did everything she could for the child, but we could tell the child longed for her mother.
Monica wouldn't stay home. She got to drinking. She started drugging. She wasn't taking good care of herself. She had friends that didn't care about her.
Monica moves to Georgia to start over. Linda, meanwhile, never gives up on getting justice for Brenda.
Linda's persistence, her bravery, her love for her sister kept this hope alive. But she stayed on them, and she'd call the police officer and say, please help us find the killer. After spending 28 years as state police, I was elected sheriff of St. Landry Parish in 2006. I've been sheriff ever since. When I first got elected sheriff, in fact, Linda said, okay, big boy, we want to close this case. She was not a pain, but she would call me routinely. And she'd call the chief of police at that time and say, please help us find the killer. And when another chief came along, Mr. Gallo, he was hounded, rightfully so, by Linda.
I decided to run a campaign for the elected position of chief of police. And during the course of that campaigning, I came across family members who expressed an interest in solving cases that had gone dormant or cold. And one family in particular was Linda, who asked me to please have someone look into this, her sister's case. And I assured her that I would.
When Gallo becomes police chief, he makes good on that promise. In 2012, the Opelousas Police Department starts a new cold case unit.
I knew the perfect person to look at these cases, and that individual, of course, was Dwayne Grimmett. It's safe to say that there are certain investigators who have a better working relationships with crime labs, and Dwayne Grimmett is one of those guys.
When you start working a case like this, you have to make sure that you have everything that either the crime lab has or that your office has, or they kept it. There was a lot of paperwork that I had to regenerate as far as getting it from the crime lab, or witnesses. You had to find the witnesses and talk to them and get statements from them again.
It was obviously to us through experience that the person that did this knew Brenda because of the violence that took place inside the home.
When speaking to previous witnesses, They even bring in Diker Chavis, who was once a person of interest.
All right, I'm gonna try to bring you back to 1988.
During the interview, Chavis mentions a name that had come up early in the investigation, a boyfriend of Brenda's.
And I heard he confessed on his dying bed that he did that.
This is someone that knew this victim.
I was determined to find out what took place in that house with Brenda DuPont in 1988. Brenda DuPont lived in a home by herself, and someone went inside that home, raped and stabbed her numerous times. I was trying to find out who it was that had committed this crime.
As soon as he hears Brenda's boyfriend's name, Lieutenant Grimmett follows up.
He was dating Brenda DuPont at the time this incident happened with her. Diker Chavis told me that they thought that David was involved in this crime.
But the tip from Chavis leads nowhere.
I found out that they were no longer living. Of course, you can't talk to a dead person, and it's hard to find statements that they had left.
Not all hope is lost, however. Police still have the DNA samples taken in 1988.
Dwayne Grimmett was saying, look, we really need to look at this evidence again, and whatever technologies that have improved, let's do our best to close this out. Help me to get to the bottom of this.
So I asked George if he could run swabs, the breast swabs and the vaginal swabs, you know, just because they were running a bunch of them at the time. They had old, cold cases.
It wasn't until 2012 that we actually were able to take those vaginal swabs and test them and get a result. Normally, we look at 16 genetic markers on the DNA molecule. We got 12 of the 16. But it was still good enough that we could get it into a database.
So he ran it, and he got a hit on it.
But when I called Dwayne Grimmett, and I gave him the name Jonelle Rubin, his jaw dropped. It didn't have significance to me, but to him, it definitely had some sort of significance.
I immediately went to the evidence room and started searching for Brenda's case. And when I pulled the case out, there's a bag of 8mm tapes. And I grabbed the bag and I start going through it, and the first person that I come across is Jonelle Rubin.
Jonelle Rubin was 18 when Brenda was killed. Police had questioned him at the time because he had a connection to Linda's children.
Jonelle was a don't give a damn about nothing person. He was getting arrested a lot. He didn't have a good record.
Lieutenant Grimmett was already familiar with Jonelle Rubin.
I had known him through my job as a police officer. Jonelle and I had had a couple of encounters as a police officer in the neighborhood. He'd get in trouble from time to time. And I go to the evidence room and I listen to the tapes. And that's when I find out pretty much that he had scratches on his neck. Brenda DuPont had cuts all over her body. So the person that was responsible for this may have had some type of wound on him also.
Did you get the scratches in your neck?
Girlfriend did that.
Stephanie?
Jonelle explained he had another girlfriend and he had gotten to an argument, and she scratched him on his neck, and that was the reason why he had these marks on his neck. And so I'm looking for a tape with her, and I can't find it.
In 1988, Jonelle gave police an alibi, but they never verified it. Grimmett immediately brings in the woman Jonelle said could vouch for him, Stephanie Keys.
Would you remember if you and him would have scratched him or cut him in any way around the neck or with your fingernails maybe?
I honestly can't remember.
Linda remembers it differently. She says Rubin was at her home right before Brenda was killed. She also recalls another important detail.
You all right today?
Yes, ma'am, I'm fine. She gave us a statement about John L., how John L. was there the night before this incident happened, and he was playing with a knife.
He had pulled a little knife out, and we made him leave because I don't believe my baby was just 4 years old, and I don't play that. They come in for trouble, I run their ass.
And then I learned that John L. Rubin had been arrested on a domestic abuse charge. So went to the Opelousas Police Department and got him out of jail, brought him to my office, sat down and started talking to him, to John L., in reference to the murder of Brenda DuPont. I mean, you still have a lot you got to finish the case. You want to make sure that the person that you're fixing to put in jail is the right person that committed this crime. Once he was placed in the jail, he was right there in my fingertips. All I had to go over there and get him and bring him back to the office and talk to him. I remember walking into this interview room in 2012, talking to John L. Rubin, knowing that I had DNA evidence, DNA hit on him. I wasn't sure that he was going to give me the information that I was looking for, but it felt good to have him in that room, and you can see that he's crossing his arms. He wants to listen to what I have to say, but he doesn't want to give me any information. You never went to the house.
Went to what? To her
Brenda's
house?
house.
No, I never did.
Never go to Brenda's?
I never did went to her house.
I knew I had DNA evidence, a vaginal swab, so I knew he knew her a lot better than what he was telling me, and he was trying to avoid that question.
To strengthen his case against Rubin, Lieutenant Grimmett will need to run a second DNA test.
The thing about getting a hit in the database, we have to then get a reference sample directly from that individual and test it to confirm the results, make sure there wasn't a sample switch in the database or something along those lines.
John L. had given his DNA in Texas in a case that he was involved in there. That's how they got the hit. So we had to do another swab on him where we could run it again, and we were able to get another DNA a hit on him.
Dwayne Grimmett went to a judge, informed him of what he had, and of course the judge saw probable cause to sign an arrest warrant.
So I brought John L. Rubin back to the police department, and I started talking to him again as it relates to the murder of Brenda DuPont. And he kept kind of pushing my button.
That was not 88.
The crime occurred in 1988.
No, my man.
I, tried to get him to tell me what had taken place there, and he wouldn't budge. So I told him I had a warrant for his arrest.
You actually charged him with this?
Yep.
What, murder?
Yep. Said I have a vaginal swab that was taken from Brenda DuPont that matches you.
DNA. Not my DNA.
Inside of her.
Not mine.
Inside of her.
Not mine.
Yours.
No, not mine.
John L. Rubin is charged with first-degree murder and aggravated rape.
I was outside sweeping my carports, and Perry Gallo called my house, and he said, I want to meet you at my office at 12 because we made an arrest. He said, we arrested John L. Rubin. I said, after 24 years, y'all finally got him.
But the uncertainty of a jury trial, and regardless of what evidence and how much evidence you have, there's potential for an acquittal.
When I walked into the courtroom and I saw John L. Rubin, he was full of smiles.
The defense argues that the prosecution can't place Rubin in the house based on the evidence. Grimmett tells a different story.
Jonelle Rubin came through the back window on the south side of the house, possibly using a ladder to get into that window and surprise Brenda. He sexually assaulted her. He stabbed her a number of times, probably with the knife that he was carrying, and he got out of the window.
I believe it's because Brenda was sort of defenseless. You know, he figured, well, she's small, she won't defend herself. I believe that's what happened.
During the trial, you know, I'm sitting there and listening to all this evidence, and I know what I have. My heart is pounding, just, you know, waiting to hear this verdict.
The jury gets the case on January 27th, 2016. After deliberating for 2 hours, they find Jonelle Rubin guilty of first-degree murder.
When that verdict come in that he was guilty, and then at that time, you saw where it really got to him, and he was taken away.
And the newspaper man took a picture of, you could see tears in his face. Oh, God. He just thought he was going to be found not guilty after all these years.
22 days after he's convicted, a judge sentences Jonelle Rubin to life in prison.
It's so much relief. I'm sure not only for me, the department that was working this case, and also the family. You know, I know that they were relieved that Brenda DuPont's killer was now going to jail for the rest of his life.
Just 2 months after Rubin is sentenced, Brenda's daughter Monica passes away at the age of 39.
I know her little girl would still be alive if my sister would be alive. You cannot come to terms with something like that happens. Every October, we have a day, it's called All Saints' Day. Once a year, we clean our loved ones' graves, and we put them fresh new flowers. I like to tell her everything's gonna be okay now. You will always be my little gâteau chaud. I love you dearly.
I did visit Brenda's grave after he was found guilty, and I told Brenda I was going to solve this. And it was like I did my work. And there it is. And it's like I could feel her. You know, I could feel her around me. Yes, indeed.
It's been a rough 35 years. Tonya will never rest in peace. She was always the protector, and then when she was gone, I didn't have my protector anymore. Even in the bad days, she would always have a way to make everybody laugh when they really wasn't a whole lot to laugh about, you know. She was just always like that. You've got to just keep on fighting for them, because they're not around to fight for themselves.
As New Year's Eve parties roll into the early morning hours, one Pensacola family leaves their house on a mission. It's not to ring in the new year.
It was a rainy, foggy night. A family on Peacock Drive was taking their dog to the all-night vet clinic at around 3 o'clock in the morning. And they pulled out of their driveway, and the daughter that was in the car thought the mannequin had been left on the curb, but her mother knew right away that it was a dead body and went home, called the police.
When the first officers arrived on scene, they found the body on the side of the road. She was wearing a blue dress and had obviously been in a struggle and possibly sexually battered just from her initial appearance.
She was missing her shoes, her clothes were dirty, There was a blue towel that was next to her body that appeared to have blood on it. It had started to rain during their investigation, so the body had to be covered with a tarp for a period until the rain subsided.
The ground around her was not disturbed in a manner that you would expect to see a violent struggle there at that location. So it becomes obvious that she was not killed there. It looked like she had been disposed of like a bag of trash on the side of the road.
You know, it was a brutal crime. This poor woman on the side of the road with, leaves in her hair and dirt all over her and the wounds that she had.
Investigators collect everything they can from this crime scene and then bring the victim's body to the medical examiner. Police determine the victim is 23-year-old Tonya McKinley.
The Pensacola Police Department identified Tonya's body through fingerprints. She had an arrest for drugs in 1981, so she was on their files, and then called the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Department, where Tonya was from, and had someone from there go and notify her friends and family that day.
We grew up in Milton, Florida. It was a nice little community, and we had a lot of friends, and we would go bowling. Bowling was our big thing we liked to do. And we'd go to the movies on the weekends or go skating. And Tonya had a real big personality. I mean, it wouldn't fit in this room. Her personality was so big.
Oh, Lord mercy. She was a tomboy. She weren't scared of nothing. She was a good girl when she weren't getting in so much trouble.
Tonya was absolutely a firecracker. She was the center of attention. She was the jokester. She's the one that, would start the conversation with in a party, a lot of people around. She never met a stranger. I remember we were driving over to Pensacola one day. We got pulled over. She was driving her mom's car, and she somehow totally talked her way out of it. And then, the police officer just said, well, just go home. And she's like, yes, that's exactly where we're headed. She starts the car back up, and I'm telling her, this is not toward home. She's like, I know. We're going to Pensacola like we planned.
Tonya drops out of high school at 17 and moves to Pensacola with Vanita.
She always loved Pensacola. I think she loved the lifestyle. It was always something going on, something to do.
Tonya was thinking of working in the medical field. We were taking the transcribing classes where you would work for a doctor and transcribe. She was really looking forward to doing that type of work.
Tonya meets Tim Davidson in the late 1970s.
I introduced her to Tim, and they immediately started living together next door to my husband and myself in a duplex, and they lived together for a couple of years. I thought that they were not good together. They were both strong-willed, hard-headed people. They fought a lot. They had a lot of arguments. She would move out a lot.
They seemed to love each other part of the time, and part of the time it's almost like a love-hate relationship. I think she really wanted it to last, but deep down, I think she knew that it wouldn't.
Tim and Tonya's rocky relationship takes a toll until a ray of hope changes everything.
She was excited to be pregnant. She was just scared because she was not in the best of relationships at the time.
In July 1983, Tonya gives birth to a boy she names Tim.
Tonya loved being pregnant. She was very excited about it. Couldn't wait till her baby was born. Didn't know that he was going to be a boy until, she had the baby. She doted on him. She just loved him so much. She took him everywhere she went. They were like a little team.
Everybody told me the same thing. They were like, your mom was great, worked hard, and loved you like nothing else. Like, you were the light of her life. You were her heart and soul.
Tonya loves her son, but by 1984, she'd had enough of his father.
The very last time I picked her up, she took everything and never went back after that.
Tonya is excited for this new chapter in her life, but work, school, and a baby at home leaves her with little time for herself.
Her son at the time was 17 months old. We didn't do a whole lot at that time because having the kids and the work and the school, and so there wasn't a lot of time left to do much of anything.
It's New Year's Eve, and Tonya's looking for a rare night out. She and Vanita drop their kids off at a daycare and head out with Vanita's husband, Larry, to Daryl's, a local bar. Tonya hopes that her friend Kurt Lisk will be bartending.
Tonya saw a lot of people there that she knew, people that we had gone to school with, the bartender, of course, and we were sitting at a table, and as she did her walking around saying her hellos. Right after midnight, when we had the champagne, my husband said, we need to go. The daycare closed at 1 a.m. I asked Tonya to go. I said, daycare's closing, we need to go. And she said, just go ahead, pick up, my son for me. So I told her, I said, well, who are you gonna go home? Who's gonna bring you home? And she says, I've got friends everywhere here. And she's like, of course I have a ride. She kissed Larry on the cheek, and she hugged me and said, Happy New Year, and I will see you in the morning. When we woke up the next morning and getting, the kids up and for breakfast, and Larry asked me, is Tonya home yet? I said, no, she's not here yet, but she'll be here soon. And then that's when my husband's mother knocked on our door. We opened the door, and she said to Larry, I need to tell you something. And she said, they found Tonya's body.
Tonya McKinley's body was found on Peacock Drive and Creighton Road in an empty lot sometime before 5 a.m. on January 1st, 1985.
The working theory was she was in a confrontation with the suspect. She suffered a blow to the head and subsequently was strangled. As part of the autopsy, they conducted a sexual battery kit, which involved taking swabs of the vaginal area. It was later determined that semen was present on those swabs. The semen in 1985 could only be classified by blood type, and it was determined to be blood type A. They located brown head hair and brown pubic hair on the towel and on her body. And then on the towel, there was also black, what was later determined to be animal hair.
Looking for leads, police turned to Tonya's family, who believe they know who the killer is.
I thought that it was Tim. We all thought that because of the relationship that they had.
I just always thought it was him. I'd asked him several times if he had killed her, but I never really thought he would give me a straight answer. But I always had it in the back of my mind that Tim was the one that killed her.
And you look at who was the closest to this person, who was the last person that had, beef with them or trouble with them, and that person in Tonya's life was, at the time, Tim Davidson.
Tonya moved in with me the day after Christmas, 1984. She called me and said, I can't be here anymore. I want to leave. I want you to come and get me. So I drove over to her house, picked her up, the baby, whatever they could fit into my car.
Tonya wanted to move on. Tim didn't.
He had a reputation for following Tonya to places she was at. If she were dating another guy, he might show up outside the guy's house. If she was at a bar with friends, he might show up outside the bar. So there definitely was a suspicion that he had maybe lashed out.
Investigators know that bad boyfriends can make good suspects.
He and Tonya did not have a smooth breakup. My understanding is he did not want to break up. She broke up with him.
Investigators asked him for a hair sample to compare to the sample found at the crime scene. It's not Tim Davidson's. Investigators then focus on the New Year's Eve partygoers and the bartender who served them, Kurt Lisk.
Kurt Lisk was someone that Tonya's friend said she was in a very casual relationship with around the time of her death. And on the night of her murder, she was seen inside of Daryl's Bar and Grill, past midnight, talking to Kurt Lisk at the bar. So if the last time that we see Tonya on that night is around 1:15 to 1:30 a.m., he's within an hour of that, talking to her and telling her friends before they left that she was gonna try to see him or go home with him that night.
When they talked to Kurt and his friends, he had an alibi.
He said that he'd gone to kind of a smaller party with his roommate and two women, and he got those three people to go to the police and say that he'd been with them the entire time.
Investigators get a sample of Kurt's blood to see if it matches what they'd found at the scene. Lisk also takes and passes a polygraph test. Months pass, and there's no arrest. Tonya's family grows frustrated.
I would call and contact investigators at least weekly or more than that, probably. You've got to just keep on fighting for them because they're not around to fight for themselves.
With no new suspects, investigators take a second look at someone they've already questioned, Kurt Lisk, to see if there's anything they've missed.
Something about Kurt Lisk's interview did not feel right. They decided that Kurt Lisk may still be a viable suspect.
Initially, the three people that had been Kurt Lisk's alibi had said that he'd left Daryl's and came to a woman's house, and they were all drinking, and that he'd only left briefly to go get a bottle of wine from his house and come right back.
The detectives re-interview Kurt Lisk's friends that provided his initial alibi. They discovered during these interviews that they could actually not account for his whereabouts for a couple hours the night of Tonya's murder. And in fact, he had asked them to provide that alibi so that he wouldn't be considered a suspect.
They found out that he'd actually left for quite some time and that his whereabouts weren't necessarily direct from Daryl's to that little party. So that obviously puts him back at the top of the list.
Kurt took a polygraph, and it was determined it was inconclusive as to whether or not he had knowledge of Tonya's murder.
While Kurt Lisk's polygraph test is inconclusive, the blood test is not.
They were able to determine Kurt Lisk's blood type was O positive, which did not match the blood type of the evidence left at the scene from the possible suspect.
Despite their suspicions, police don't have enough to arrest Lisk. He was their best and maybe only strong suspect. The case of the murdered single mother goes as cold as a winter wind on New Year's Eve.
We were told that it was probably a transient that was going through town and that they may never catch who did this. So, as the years go by and life goes on, we never forgot, about Tonya, never forgot about what happened, but I never believed that they would actually find who did this to her.
Tonya's family never tells her son Tim about his mother's murder.
My father, none of my family ever talked about what happened with my mom. I could tell they got really flustered and really upset, and I didn't, as a child, want to feel that uncomfortableness. I didn't want to make anybody upset either, so I just left it alone. I was raised by my father who taught me hard work and made me very mechanically inclined, but it was kind of rough. I moved around a lot. Anytime I asked about my mom, I was told from the very beginning that she died in a car accident. She died when I knew she passed away when I was 17 months old, but she died in a car accident, and I left it at that. I was probably 14, 15. I think it was around Christmas time. So I was digging around my father's closet, trying to look around for Christmas gifts, and I found a letter. Like, we're talking about needle in a haystack. The letter was addressed to Montel Williams. He was the talk show host. I read the letter, and it was asking if he could help with my mother's case, and it gave details. She was murdered. My heart dropped. I didn't know what to think. It was like meant to be that I find this.
Now a teenager, Tim wants answers.
It was one of those things where you read this letter and you bring it, and I'm like, hey, what is this all about? And they're just kind of like dumbfounded. What do they say? They're looking at each other, they're looking at me. Do we tell them that this is the truth? But I don't blame them. You're gonna try to protect your children as much as possible. I know as a child, and even into my teen years, I buried a lot. I kind of felt helpless, so I just blocked it out. It made me angry. It just hurt. It hurt bad. I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have protected her.
Tonya's case goes nowhere for more than a decade, until a new crime scene analyst joins the investigation.
Very quickly after I started there, the primary crime scene analyst on the McKinley case told me about the case, and it became an important case for me. It always seemed like the one that got away, the one that everybody wanted to solve, because she was a young mother. She could have been anybody's mother, anybody's sister, anybody's daughter. I empathized with that. When I started at the police department, I had young children at home.
Nicole believes the DNA collected at the crime scene 16 years earlier might be key to solving the case.
So here we have actually the original evidence bag from 1985. This towel has gone to the FBI and to FDLE. Areas that were identified on the towel, either that tested positive for blood or tested positive for the presence of semen, would have had cuttings taken, which is why you see holes in the towel. Those were cuttings taken by the crime lab. The DNA wasn't extracted, and a genetic profile was created, and that genetic profile was then entered into CODIS. In 1985, there was no DNA analysis. So initially, all the evidence was sent to the FBI, and all you could tell at that time was ABO blood group. So as the technology progressed, the evidence was sent back over and over again.
Analysts repeatedly test the DNA, but it leads nowhere. Tonya's sister, meanwhile, sends investigators countless emails.
Hello, my name is Renee McCall. I am the sister of Tonya Etheridge McKinley. I don't want to bother you because you have a horrific job, but when you know something, let me know and drop me a line.
For years, there is no line to drop, no news to tell, and no justice for Tonya and the family. Finally, after 3 decades, there might be a break in the case.
In July of 2015, I found a letter from our state attorney and one of our police captains requesting that the biological material from the McKinley case be put into the familial searching of the CODIS system. The familial searching is you are looking for somebody who is related to the person who committed the crime. That's not a direct match. It's a match to somebody who is potentially a relative of the person who committed the crime. And in August of 2015, we received a potential match based on this familial DNA searching to Donald Farmer. It's like new life was being put into this case.
Using new DNA technology, investigators identified Donald Farmer as a possible relative of Tonya's killer. They head to Jacksonville to collect DNA from his family.
One of the male members of this family had passed away, but the family was very cooperative and actually provided a glass eye that that family member had used over the years. FDLE was able to recover DNA from that and compare it to the case.
Familial DNA technology isn't foolproof. It too can send investigators straight into a dead end.
The samples were sent to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for comparison, and none of them matched. It's like a balloon being deflated. Here we have this spark of hope, and then it's just kind of like crushed.
Investigators determined that Tonya's killer is not part of the Farmer family.
Well, it was a lot of frustration because we was all wanting Tonya's case to be solved as long as I can remember.
Very quickly, I thought they had closed the door on it, that it was just somebody else that was murdered.
It seemed as if Tonya McKinley's killer had gotten away with murder, until Tony Adame comes to town.
When I first heard about the Tonya McKinley case, I was working a weekend shift as a news editor at the Pensacola News-Journal. I'd been a sports reporter for about 15 years, and sports are great, but I think I was just looking for a little more. I started to dig around the cold case files for the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Once I started to do research, I went online and saw Renee, Tonya's sister, created a Facebook page that had been going for, at that point, I think 6 or 7 years. And you could just tell from there the pain that it had caused. I had pulled all the old newspaper articles, so I pored over those. I reached out to Renee, started reaching out to family members, figuring out who Tonya was, what was important to her, who she loved, her relationships, her life.
As a reporter, there's only so much Tony can do with old newspaper articles and interviews with family members. He asks police for Tonya's case file.
Early 2019, I was notified that there was a public records request for the entire Tonya McKinley file. So I found out that a man named Tony Adame, who was a reporter, had made this request. He worked for the Pensacola News-Journal at the time. It caused concern because we had already decided we were trying to keep this as quiet as possible, simply for the fact that we didn't want to get the family's hopes up. So I reached out to him and asked him for a meeting, mostly to find out why he was interested in the case.
I gave him a brief spiel, a backstory, and I told him that I thought it wasn't fair that she didn't get to raise her son and that he didn't get to have a mother.
So when I met with Tony and we had lunch and listened to his story about how he became involved in it, I had to make a personal judgment that he was sincere. He had a true personal interest in the case.
He told me that he was going to do something he'd never done before and that he was going to give a journalist access to PPD case files and PPD crime scene photos.
I made a deal with Tony where I brought him onto our team and allowed him to have access to our meetings, the thought processes, how we investigated this case.
I couldn't tell anyone that he was working on it or that I was working with him, and I couldn't write about it until he solved the case. But what we agreed on, we shook on that day was a year, 1 year from that day. If it wasn't solved, I was gonna maybe start writing stuff about it.
The alliance between the detective and the reporter comes at a crucial time in this decades-long investigation.
In early 2019, Nicole Heintzelman came to my office and told me that she had heard of this technique called a genetic genealogy. She reviewed all our cold cases, and she has submitted the Tonya McKinley evidence to FDLE for evaluation. Shortly after that, we received a report from FDLE that the case indeed was suitable for genetic genealogy.
Genetic genealogy has been a total game changer in the field of forensics. Because in the past, we've had to rely on offender databases, and now we have anybody and their relatives who have put their DNA into these genetic genealogy websites that is just, opened, the suspect pool from, a few thousand to millions.
I thought it was a great idea. Pensacola Police Department, we're always in favor of trying new things. We embrace technology, and so having a new way of approaching this case was exciting to me, and the hope of being able to bring closure to a family after all these years would be very satisfying. This case was different than a lot of normal investigations. This case had been investigated through the normal channels for 34 years. We're doing something different, and I really wanted to focus on the genetic genealogy, where those leads would take us.
Captain Mallet can't find Tonya's killer in the CODIS system, so he changes tactics and forms a special task force that includes detectives and a dogged reporter.
I can't explain the forces that brought us all together. I look back at that time, and there was nothing else to indicate that it was time for this case to be reinvestigated. So it was just happenstance and maybe a little bit of God's hand that brought us all together.
It was strange because I was excited, but I couldn't tell anyone about what was going on. So I knew that they were doing something big, and I knew that I was a part of it.
We would meet periodically, the gene team, and would try to talk out what the best targets would be for genetic testing.
I mean, we learned from each other. I learned a lot from them. Just being in those meetings and seeing how they operated was fascinating as well.
The so-called gene team searches sites like GEDmatch, looking for a relative of the killer with similar or familial DNA.
The first initial round of genealogy identified a third or fourth cousin to the suspect. But again, we were a long way away from the suspect. And I think all of us at that point were a little discouraged because we had hoped we would start at the suspect, or at least close enough that we had a very good direction to go.
Mallet looks even deeper into the DNA pool, searching for a match.
I went to visit Chuck. He'd traced back family trees to I believe the 1790s in the area. One day in his office, he goes, "Oh, hey, come look at my room." It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. I went in there and it was just this like you see in the movie A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, where he has the math drawings all over the chalkboards. And it was essentially that version of family trees. I was kind of blown away. I was like, wow, your mind works in kind of different ways, man.
The family tree for this case included 4,000 plus people. I had 3 computers in the room with different databases and was researching on different computers and cross-checking and just whiteboarding this entire family tree.
He's looking for the name of a possible great-great-grandfather, and he sees a blank space in the tree. He's looking for a way to fill it in. It was just trying to fill in the blanks of a mystery that's now in his mind hundreds of years old because he's going back so far, and one name could change everything. I got a call at my desk from Chuck Mallett. He said, we got a name, Daniel Wells. I said, let me call you back in a few hours. And I just went at it in public databases. And that stuff going back to the mid-1980s, right after Tonya's murder, very quickly that made it seem like, this might be the guy.
Investigators begin round-the-clock surveillance on Daniel Leonard Wells, a 57-year-old woodworker and father.
He was a very good possible suspect in this case. We found that he did live in Pensacola during the time period of the murder, that in the late 1990s, mid-1990s, he had moved to Missouri. He had been arrested in Missouri for exposure of sexual organs and lewd and lascivious conduct. One day, on his way into work, he was smoking a cigarette, and as he drove down the road, he flicked the cigarette butt out the window. Officers that were directly behind him notified another surveillance vehicle a few cars back. That officer stopped traffic, went out into the street, and was able to recover that cigarette butt.
The DNA on Wells' cigarette is a 100% match to the killer's DNA.
It was a pretty amazing feeling to know that we had gotten to the right guy. I think the first thing I said is not something we can say on broadcast TV, but it was a great feeling to know at that point. The team talked about how best to effect the arrest because we wanted to do an interview afterwards. So we had two detectives use a marked patrol car and conduct a traffic stop after he left work one day.
Hey, good, how are you doing? I'm Officer Earhart with the Pensacola Police Department. Because of the virus and everything, do you mind talking to me outside? Okay. We'll just step right back here to my car. That way, the contagion and all that kind of stuff. So you said you were coming from work today? Yeah. Okay.
We wanted him to think initially it was a regular traffic stop until we showed up, and we wanted it in his head pretty quick that it was bigger than anything that he might have been thinking of that day.
How you doing, Miss Wells?
Yes,
How you doing? Miss Wells, you're going to have to come with us. We're going to be bringing you down to the police station and have a conversation. These two officers will be taking you down there. Okay? All right. Sir, we'll discuss it when we get down there, but you're going to have to get in the car with them.
We got back to the police station. I went right up to Chuck Mallett's office because I knew he had the closed circuit on his computer screen in there so I could watch the interrogation. I mean, they're trying to close the oldest cold case in the history of Northwest Florida. So there was a level of excitement that you could feel when you walked in. It was because we were so close and all that work had gone into that moment. I can't describe the tension of sitting there and watching them interrogate Daniel Wells.
Let me show you, Tonya.
Okay.
I mean, this one she would look like if she'd gone out.
Yeah. I don't know her.
Don't know her at all?
No. I've
You
never
never had
seen her
contact
before.
with her?
Never.
You could not tell that he was nervous at all. He was very calm. He was very smooth. He wasn't outwardly nervous.
All right, let's cut the chase. So that young lady I just showed you a picture of.
Right.
New Year's Eve, 1984, going 1985. January 1st, early morning, 1985.
Okay.
Was found dead on the side of a road. And I have the evidence that you're the one that's there.
Oh.
I have irrefutable evidence that you're there. I'm not doing all this on a guess.
I hear
I'm
you,
not
but
doing all this
I don't know.
on a hunch. Dan,
Yeah.
telling you, you're there.
I wasn't there.
After 45 minutes, Wells begins to crack.
You could see in his face, you could see it in his eyes, that he knew it was starting to crumble. He had admitted that, yes, he had met Tonya at Daryl's that night.
I remember that her friends had left her
and she wanted a ride home. And we went by my house, and we had a few drinks and stuff, and it just escalated from that. She I think I hit her in the head, and it knocked her out. And it was a traumatic blow, and it killed her.
He hit her in the head with a butcher block cutting board. It is not uncommon, for somebody to reach the point of admitting to a crime, but then trying to minimize it as best they can.
We were going to have sex again, and we didn't, and we kind of got into it a little bit.
Take her out, you put her in a truck, you drive around, and pushed her out and dumped her on the side of the road.
Yeah, like a bag of trash, man.
He did something, obviously committed this awful rape and murder, and he just had kept it in. I think that was kind of the shock of it, to hear him say it. When they found Tonya's body, it was covered in black dog hairs, and there were also black dog hairs on the towel that was found by her body. And that was kind of always a clue that they had clung to. When they arrested Daniel Wells and got his confession, it turned out that his roommate had a black lab and had another dog that had black hair as well.
"35 years after Tonya McKinley's New Year's Eve murder, her killer is finally arrested.
The night that I called Tim, I had the privilege of giving him a call and letting him know what all these people have been doing. Hey, is this Tim?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Captain Mallet. I'm with the Pensacola Police Department.
Hey, boss, how you doing?
I'm great. So you don't know me. We've never met. But I want to let you know that I just made an arrest on your mother's murder.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I think you can hear my voice crack because I think it all caught up to me.
Are you serious right now?
Yes, sir. Serious.
Oh my God.
I know it's been a long time.
But yeah, man. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. I'm freaking out right now. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
They said that they caught my mom's killer. Yeah, I was, I'm on the phone. I'm like, wait, what? I mean, what did you just say? It was just this insane sense of relief. This huge weight, this huge burden lifted off my shoulders, off my family's shoulders.
Captain Mallet has one more phone call to make.
Hello?
Hey, Renee.
Hey.
Hey, this is Captain Mallet with Pensacola Police Department. I want to let you know that I've been working on Tonya's case for about the last year, and today we made an arrest on it. We arrested him today, brought him to the station, and just got a confession.
Oh my God, I can't believe it.
And I know it's taken a long time, but it's one of those cases we never gave up on.
My sister's now.
She can rest, baby.
She can rest.
She said, Mama, they found him, they found him, they found him. I said, found who? She said, the man that killed Tonya. I said, oh, Lord. Then I started jumping. And we was just jumping down the hallway.
Wells might be facing the rest of his life in prison, but once again, he cheats justice.
Approximately 2 weeks after his arrest, I came to work and started receiving texts from our PIO. He said, Wells committed suicide in jail last night.
When I found out that he committed suicide, I felt very, very cheated.
I wanted him to go to trial. I wanted the jury or the people or the judge to say, yes, based on the evidence we have, testimony, and all the information, yes, you are guilty without a shadow of a doubt. There's a lot of what ifs. What if it never happened and my mother raised me? How would my life be so different? What would my life have been like? How dare you take my mother away from me? How dare you deny me the opportunity to have a different childhood or a better childhood? How dare you deny that my mother from me? How different would my life be if she was never taken from me?
She's gonna always be there in my heart, like she's always in Renee's heart.
I want it out there. I want people to know that she wasn't forgotten, that her family and friends think about her all the time. She should be here raising her child and having, her grandchildren and, having a life like the rest of us have.